let's talk a little bit about tactics. So the first thing would be to learn would be the direct attack. So what is direct attack as a tactic? So it means that the only thing you will do is the only movement you will do, the movements stepping and striking, what you do, those are focused on hitting your opponent with a single strike. So it means that, for example, you cut here and this will hit, or you cut here, this will hit. It doesn't matter what kind of strike it is, what the angle is. You just go ahead and try to hit your opponent. So this is the most basic way of attacking, and depending on the situation, it can work really well. So if your opponent is distracted, for example, in a melee, so group against group, this is the only tactic you really need. So when they're looking somewhere else, you will step in and strike, because they don't see you coming. And this is also really fast, just one movement. But if you are in a duel, one-on-one type of situation, this tactic is very risky. So it will work if your opponent is slower, because they don't have the time to react when you are striking. You know, there is no defense against speed. If you are hit by lightning, you can't block it. But in practical terms, we as people are slower, so they see your strike coming and they can exploit that. So it's not something I would recommend except for practice. So if you are learning to fight with your training partner, then you will strike easy strikes and they can learn how to parry it and counter strike, for example. So it's really good for that kind of practice. But it's not going to be enough for fighting duels. So how it goes is that for every tactic there is a counter tactic. So now if your opponent will see that you are striking with the direct attack, they will then apply the counter tactic, and the counter tactic to direct strike will be, for example, this is one option, we block it and counter strike. So now you are likely to get hit with your direct attack. The other option here is not to block it, but instead step away and strike. So if I would be striking you with a direct attack, you would just step somewhere else and hit my hand, for example. But it's a similar idea, and that'll work if you have been practicing that. Okay, so let's see. Now I know that I cannot use the direct attack because you will parry and counter strike. So what I'm gonna do then, I will take another tactic. This is typically called a feint. So now it looks like that I'm striking you, but really I'm not, so I'm gonna change the direction of the strike. I go high and then I strike your leg. So you try to block here, but my sword goes around and I will strike your leg instead. So that's one feint. Just go here and then you can maybe even thrust. There are two ways of feinting, or actually maybe even we could discuss one. So it's like you pre-program in this one movement already. So when you go, you already know you are not going to finish the strike. You go midway and then you change, no matter what your opponent does. But that's kind of a beginner feint. The other feints are like this, that you go like this and then you strike. You're like, But if you do this without watching your opponent, you are using a beginner feint. So the advanced feinting is actually that you will go ahead with your sword, but you are monitoring your opponent, what they are doing. And only when you see that they start to block your sword, then you change. Because you see, if they are not blocking your sword, you can just continue and hit them. So then your idea, which kind of began as a feint idea, becomes a direct attack. But it works because your opponent is not blocking. But if they are blocking, then you change the direction of your strike, and that was kind of a feint. Seems I have a small body over here. Hopefully I'm not sitting on your nest. Anyway, okay, let's say you have been the victim of a feint, the beginner one or the advanced one. Why did that happen? Because you assumed that you are getting a direct attack, incoming direct attack, but it wasn't so. So in your head you were thinking, I'm gonna block it, but you forgot to monitor your opponent. So the simple block is that you assume, as you see it starts coming here, you assume it's coming here and then you block it. But if you are facing a skilled fighter, it can be a feint, and then your block is here and his sword is here, and you lost the fight. So what you need to do instead is watch your opponent when you're blocking. So now there are many options here. If you see they are switching down, you can also switch down and block it here, and then counter from there, for example, with the thrust. So that's one possibility. Or what you can also do is that if you start the block and notice that they are feinting, you can change this to direct attack. So you can just attack, for example, their hand, because if they are doing this and switching or doing this and coming again, they have lost some time, and you can exploit that. So hopefully you got it. So the point here is monitoring your opponent. So any strike coming at you might not be what it seems to be like. For example, if I thrust here, I can direct it here and switch to a high cut. And now if you were blocking down, your sword is down and my sword is in your head. If you were not monitoring what I'm doing. So in that way, everything comes back to this direct attack, because if somebody's feinting, obviously they are not going to be striking at you with the feint. It's a feint, right? So you can use that time to direct attack your opponent as soon as you notice that they are feinting. So monitoring. That's really difficult, and this is only one monitoring point in time. There can be several depending on how advanced you are. And it also requires quite good sword handling skills. So most of us can only strike like full strikes, for example, so they cannot change the direction of the sword mid-flight, because they don't have the physical strength, for example, the sword is too heavy, or they are striking too fast. So once it goes, it goes, it can't be changed anymore. So that's when the strategy or your training plan comes in. Are you really practicing how to use the sword so that you can change the direction of your sword as soon as you want? That is difficult, but that's the way how the experts fight. So you can immediately see that that when somebody is changing mid-flight the sword direction, then you know that's expert level fighter. But I wouldn't practice that first. I just want to make it like really clear. It's later. You have to have the physical skills and also understanding how to change and where to change. So the technical abilities as well. And then you have had like in your training strategy this monitoring, changing of direction incorporated and practiced. Otherwise you can't do it and you might even injure yourself. For example, your wrist. So be careful with that. But this is the tactical approach I use personally to understand sword fighting. It has worked really, really well. It's also really, really difficult.